Justin McFarland here at Slakker Racing. I'm picking up my 2014 Porsche Carrera 4S, 278,000 miles. We think we got it rectified with what needs to be, get her up and running again. I'm very much looking forward to it, and I'd highly suggest Slakker Racing and Brandon and the entire team here. It's been an amazing experience, and looking forward to the next chapter of my car. Thank you.
Really interesting. He was recommended to us by Richard Swim with PCarWise. Been told by a couple of other shops that he needed a rebuild.
What originally happened was Father's Day of 2024. I took my car out of storage in Charlotte and was going up to Boone, North Carolina to do some of my favorite roads that I hadn't had a chance to get to. I pulled into my hotel, and as I'm pulling in, I see this trail of liquid the length of the parking lot. I didn't think anything of it. I park my car and I pull out and I see all this steam, so this was the third expansion tank that went. So I knew exactly what happened. So at that point I had to tow the car. Hickory, North Carolina Porsche was the first dealership, and they were very kind. We're able to get a new expansion tank on, but what happened is they couldn't pull vacuum, and I'm not a car guy. I just like to drive, so I don't understand the mechanics or anything. It's just let my car be safe, so when I'm on the open road, I don't put anyone else in harm's way, either bodily or property. So they were having trouble pulling vacuum, and at this point, something else happened with maybe an engine fault or something, because they then went to do some bore scoring to figure out why they couldn't pull back. So we were going back and forth by phone because I didn't live in North Carolina at the time, and they were brilliant. And I just want to always make sure that I am all about Porsche. They've been nothing but phenomenal to me. And the smile you see doesn't happen often, but with the brand, it certainly does. For whatever reason, whatever was occurring with the car, I couldn't make heads or tails of it. But at that point, they said, Justin, you're going to have to replace the engine. So, I was looking at the numbers, and I reached out to Porsche Restoration in Atlanta to see if my car would qualify for a restoration and go that route. I was hesitant to do a new engine because it was going to be somebody else's engine. It wasn't going to be a brand new engine. It was going to be someone else's engine that was rebuilt. So I started reaching back up to Porsche to see if they would rebuild my engine, and I didn't care how long it took. At least I knew it was my engine that was being rebuilt. I did all the miles minus 5 kilometers. I was fortunate enough to do a European delivery. So I didn't want to put somebody else's engine in if it wasn't going to be a brand new engine. So I decided to not do anything. We weren't able to remedy the not being able to pull the vacuum and get the car up and running. So I thought long and hard. I still had my storage unit. So I thought, well, let me just store it or bring back to Charlotte and just store it and let me think about it for a bit. And then I did some searching. There was Hendricks, I think, Porsche in Charlotte, which was right next to my storage units. So I did an audible, and it's like, let's just send it there. So what they were able to find out is, I guess it was bank one, I don't know if it was the valve or the solenoid was staying in a high lift. So that was what they couldn't explain to me over at Hickory. And then with the pulling a vacuum, there was a leak in the flange. So between those two things, they were able to get it up and running, and I let them have the car for the week and, do multiple test drives just to make sure nothing else occurred, and everything was fine. So when I got the car, I kept it in Charlotte, did a couple of, little trips. I didn't want to go too crazy. So no spirited driving, just going back and forth to Asheville to see how my friends were doing after the Hurricane Helene had destroyed that area. So I went back Thanksgiving, and I was able to see firsthand what my friends were going through, and I just couldn't justify keeping my car in the area to enjoy the roads and the hikes that I like with what others were going through. So at that point, I brought the car down to Florida, and then, so long story, taking it out on my birthday to get registered and titled, it seemed the same thing happened again, if not worse. So the dealership in Sarasota, again, brilliant to me, but they came to the same conclusion. It's Justin, you need a new engine. So nothing different. We can't fix your engine. It's going to be an engine it's already been fixed. I don't know the history of it. And I said, yeah, I'm just not comfortable with doing it. So at that point, I thought I was going to sell the car. And, at that point, it's a broken car. I'm not going to get much for it, even though there's a great story behind it. So I reached out to come back to, I stumbled on PCarWise, gave Richard a call, and I apologize if I'm getting his name wrong, just going on memory, but he spoke very highly of Brandon and the entire team here at Slakker Racing and said, Justin, I know what you're going through, but I think they're going to be able to help you. So initially, Brandon thought we were going to break the engine down and send the block over to the UK and work with those two companies as far as, relining things and getting new internals and going that route. But with him doing the bore scoring and the assessment, he thought, Justin, I think we can get, probably another 100,000 miles out of your engine. And right now we're at 278,000. And I thought that was worth a shot. And then, meeting you and Will and Sam in the front as I came in, it sounds like you guys want to be part of the story and see how things progress.
When we got it in here, we looked over all of the other diagnoses and we looked at the cylinders, and they really didn't look that bad for having 275,000 miles on it. And so we went through troubleshooting it. There was a misfire that kept coming back in cylinder 6. There had been some vacuum and some coolant issues. So first I was testing the cylinder 6 coils. We tried swapping it out, didn't make a difference. And then I started testing the resistance of the pins on the coil plugs to ground, and found that one of the pins had about a 1 ohm resistance to ground that it should have been infinite. And so that told us that wiring harness was grounded out someplace. So we went ahead and dropped the engine. We replaced the wiring harness. We replaced the fuel injectors while we had it out. That was a bit of a chore as they were pretty rusted. There was still a few on that 991. They did a vacuum solenoid update, and it's got vacuum solenoids for flaps and for cooling and all sorts of other stuff. And so there was still a couple of vacuum solenoids that had not been updated on that car. So we updated those, and sure enough, it runs amazingly well and took care of the issues. At this point, that car has an additional 3,000 or 4,000 miles on it. We went with a little heavier weight oil. Oil consumption has dropped to below about half a quart over that 3,000 or 4,000 mile period. And so that's well within what we would consider normal. And we haven't seen any more coolant errors out of it. And so, yeah, we just thought, as opposed to rebuilding it at 275,000 miles, we thought it would be much cooler to go ahead and repair it, even though that's not our normal thing, and get it back out there and just see how far it'll go.
Well, it all started with that first phone call. I think if I had my phone records, I truly believe it was an 1.5-hour phone call at the end of Brandon's day. And I always kept on interrupting him. It's like, I don't want to keep you. He goes, Justin, that's what I'm here for. And at that point, he didn't know if he was ever going to see the car or if I was willing to commit to that repair. And that's how much time he gave me. And it was that first impression. And I spoke to Brandon and Richard over at PCarWise, and I'm very respectful, and I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. But I did talk to struggling with the word, but someone who is well thought of with his work, well reputable, thank you, in North Atlanta with bore scoring and stuff like this. And I sent him a very, very well detailed email, and to the point that I had my brother look it over before I sent it. I'm not the most educated person, so what probably most people could do in a paragraph, it takes me a whole page, so to speak. And he thought it was to the heart, really, was being respectful of the brand that is Porsche and the dealerships that I was struggling to get answers with. And how he could go about doing it. And, he read the email, and it was a very short reply that was, be thankful that you got that many miles out of it, and there's nothing I can do for you. He wasn't even willing to have a conversation. He just assumed that, you know what? Yeah, of course you need a new engine. And in that, none of us are perfect, and there's an opportunity to right a wrong or give people a second chance. But that was the antithesis of how Brandon treated me. No email exchange, Richard giving me Brandon, and I believe it was his cell number. And it was that first interaction, and I felt so good with that, whether I was going to be able to have another mile with my car, or if that was like, yeah, Justin, you do need a new engine. And at that point, I would have to make a decision on the price. And then Will reaching out to me. And I'll end with this. I had my title with no lien on it. I had my car insurance. It's been insured even though it's been off the road, and both have my VIN number, my valid license in Florida, and I couldn't get a temporary tag. So Sam here, along with doing a little form letter of an authorized agent, Brandon went over and did a VIN verification with the local sheriff's office here. FedEx that back to me Friday night for me to get on Saturday so I could get into my appointment at Florida, their version of the Department of Motor Vehicles. So I'm now titled, I have a license plate. I'm not sure how many people would go above and beyond that, so it saved me from, having to tow the car back to Florida just to do the title where, I want to drive it. But, meeting you, Ricardo, Will, Sam, Brandon, and I'm a firm believer that it starts at the top. And the passion that Brandon has, I can only imagine that it's infectious with you and all the team members. And my hope is that how he treated me, and I would imagine it is the case, is how he treats you all and all other customers that come in. So I have a couple appointments that came available for me back at my old home in Cleveland, Ohio. So I'm actually gonna, I drove in from Birmingham today, from Sarasota the day before, and I'm gonna try to get to Cleveland for tomorrow afternoon. I have somebody holding an appointment for me, and then in the morning I'm gonna check in to say, yes, I can make it, or no, I can't. And I was given the green light that it's okay to do a long trip with it right off the bat. So I'm very anxious. It's a second lease in life, and I'm kind of thankful that I'm not doing it on my favorite roads in the mountains. I'm glad that it's just going to be kind of boring on the highway, hitting truck stops for a coffee and use the restroom and gassing up. Because I just want to see if there's that reconnection, so to speak, or am I at a point where, Steffi doesn't owe me a thing, and maybe I sell the story, or I don't want to say sell the story, but I sell the car in hopes to let somebody else be a part of the story. I picked it up in Stuttgart in September 2013, and, here we are 11.5 years later. So no, I'm very anxious. Like I said, if for whatever reason, there's not much life left in her, and it does require an engine rebuild, then that's something I'll certainly think about. But very much looking forward to it again.
Thanks for watching. I'm Philip, and if you would like to see our upcoming video, hit the button right there.